If you spot a yellow dandelion popping up on your lawn, your first instinct is usually just, well, warfare.
Oh, yeah. Pure panic.
Right. Like you grab the trowel, you grab the weed killer, you just want the invasion gone.
Exactly.
But for two students, Kesser and Steen, that invasive weed is actually, well, it's the primary raw ingredient for this highly specific botanical alchemy.
It really is.
So welcome to today's deep dive. We are exploring a super fascinating stack of sources today, detailing how these two students are using Korean natural farming to turn the dreaded dandelion into a magical zero-waste fertilizer.
Yeah, a fertilizer they affectionately call black gold, or sort gold in Danish.
Weird cult. Like
Yeah.
that. And before we get into the actual brewing process of that,
Mm-hmm.
make sure you hit subscribe on your app so you never miss a deep dive into topics just like this.
You definitely want to subscribe for this one.
Yeah. So the way Kesser and Steen secure their raw materials is honestly just a masterclass in, well, opportunistic resource management.
Oh, it's brilliant. So Steen has this neighbor, Gunnar, and Gunnar possesses basically every gardening machine known to man.
Right.
He completely obsesses over having this pristine lawn. But Gunnar also happens to be completely obsessed with Sunday football.
The perfect distraction.
Exactly. So Steen realizes he can offer this like highly targeted service. He just goes over and pulls every single dandelion out of Gunnar's lawn by hand,
Wow.
all while Gunnar is just, inside glued to the game.
So the neighbor gets the immaculate turf that he desperately wants without lifting a finger.
Yep.
And the students secure just this unlimited free supply of organic raw material for their chemistry project. I mean, it is the perfect heist.
It really is a win-win.
But to understand why they are treating weeds like this precious commodity, we got to look at the underlying frameworks they're operating in, right? Which is Korean natural farming, or KNF.
Yeah, KNF.
And the core objective here really seems to be replacing external chemical inputs. So, synthetic fertilizers, pesticides, entirely with local biology.
That is the whole foundation of the KNF philosophy, really. It's this highly efficient agricultural method that's just built entirely around self-sufficiency and recycling local farm waste.
Right, using what you already have.
Exactly. The system relies almost entirely on what they call indigenous microorganisms.
Or IMOs, right?
Yeah, IMOs. So we're talking about native bacteria, fungi, protozoa, stuff that's already adapted to your local environment.
Okay.
And by cultivating these local microbes, you create incredibly rich, biologically active soil, which actually fundamentally changes the plant's internal chemistry.
And that's where the pest control comes in, right?
Mm.
Because the core insight of KNS relies on the idea that a biologically optimized plant is inherently, well, unappetizing to pests.
Yeah, it completely flips the script.
The mechanics of that are so fascinating because it totally challenges the standard agricultural assumption that, bugs are just this inevitability that you have to poison.
Right, like you just have to spray everything.
Right. But it actually comes down to how the plant processes nitrogen. Because when a plant thrives in a robust KNF environment, its metabolic processes are just super efficient.
Highly efficient.
The native microbes basically help the plant rapidly convert absorbed nitrogen into complete, complex proteins.
And that is the key right there.
Because most common pests, like aphids or caterpillars, they have super simple digestive systems.
Right. They are biologically adapted to feed on stressed, unhealthy plants. Plants that contain high levels of free-floating amino acids.
Which are essentially incomplete proteins.
Exactly. To an aphid, an incomplete protein is just a free, pre-digested meal.
Oh, wow.
They literally lack the digestive enzymes required to break down complex protein structures found in a healthy plant.
So if a pest tries to feed on a plant grown in a thriving KNF system, it's biologically like a human trying to digest a brick wall.
That's a great way to put it. They just can't extract the nutrition they need, so they move on.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
You eliminate the need for chemical pesticides just by altering the nutritional composition of the sap from the inside out.
Exactly.
So if the goal is to extract the energy from local plants to feed this microbial system, the dandelion makes perfect anatomical sense, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
Because it isn't just a surface weed. It has this incredibly long, deep taproot that acts as a dynamic accumulator.
Huh.
Like, while shallow-rooted vegetables are just exhausting the topsoil, the dandelion is basically a botanical miner.
Right, it digs deep.
Yeah, it constantly pulls vital sequestered minerals up from deep within the subsoil like calcium, magnesium, iron, and it stores them in its surface leaves and flowers.
And then timing the harvest is how you maximize that accumulated energy.
Right, because spring matters here.
Yeah, as spring arrives, the dandelion is like one of the very first plants to break dormancy. It just bursts into bloom with immense vigor.
Yeah, they're everywhere suddenly.
So those fresh yellow flower heads, they are these concentrated packets of spring startup energy. They are densely packed with naturally occurring growth hormones and phosphorus.
So it's basically a biological battery just waiting to be tapped.
Exactly. But you have to extract that energy following strict KNF protocols, specifically when you're brewing what they call fermented plant juice, or FPJ.
And this is where the rules come in.
Yeah.
Kesser and Steen have to gather these young weeds in the early morning, right? And specifically after a dry day.
Yep, the early morning part is crucial. Harvesting then ensures the plant hasn't yet expended its stored energy on the day's photosynthesis.
Oh, okay.
So the active compounds and the enzymes are at their absolute peak concentration.
And the dry weather rule.
Also critical, rain literally washes away the natural beneficial microbes living right on the surface of the plant's leaves and flowers.
Oh, right. Because those surface microbes are the invisible workforce that drives the whole fermentation process.
You got it.
Oh.
So once the dry, early morning flowers are harvested, the boys mix them with brown sugar in a 1-to-1 ratio by weight.
Just normal brown sugar.
Yeah, but the sources are explicitly clear that you have to avoid molasses for this specific extraction.
Why is that?
Because molasses contains excess moisture. The extraction environment needs to start relatively dry to allow physics to basically do the heavy lifting.
Physics meaning osmosis, right?
Exactly.
Because the brown sugar acts as this powerful osmotic pump.
Mm-hmm.
Like when you combine the plant material and the sugar, and you have to make sure it's packed loosely, right, to keep airflow and keep the enzymes alive.
Right, you don't want to smother it.
Right. So the sugar creates this highly concentrated exterior environment. And osmosis naturally draws the moisture, the chlorophyll, the growth hormones, all of it, out of the plant cell.
Yeah, it pulls it right across the cell membrane.
So you're essentially creating a botanical cold brew.
That's exactly what it is.
You don't need heat or harsh chemical solvents, which is great because those would denature and destroy all those delicate plant enzymes.
Right. And as those vital fluids are drawn out by the sugar, those native microbes we carefully preserve from the leaf surface, they start to metabolize the carbohydrates.
They start eating the sugar?
Yeah, and they break it down to create a weak ethanol solution.
A tiny bit of alpha.
Just a minute amount. But it is highly effective at extracting and stabilizing the plant's active components.
Uh-oh.
Then they place the mixture into a glass or ceramic container, fill about 2/3 full, cover it with a porous paper for gas exchange, and store it in a dark room at a very controlled temperature.
Like 23 to 25 degrees Celsius, right?
Exactly.
Our sources actually include an illustration of a man in a vintage suit holding a bubbling, glowing green flask.
I love that picture.
It perfectly encapsulates the mad science aesthetic of this whole process. But, I mean, it's pure biological engineering.
It really is. And then after 7 to 10 days, the osmotic extraction peaks. So they strain out the solid plant matter, and that leaves behind this stable, dark, enzyme-rich syrup.
The black gold.
The black gold.
So once Kesser and Steen have this syrupy extract, they consult the sources, specifically an expert named Mr. Hendricks, to figure out how to actually apply it.
Yeah, because you don't just dump it on the ground.
Right. Rather than applying this nutrient-dense syrup to the soil, Mr. Hendricks advises foliar feeding. He tells the boys to spray the FPJ directly onto the buds of their apple trees just before the trees bloom.
Which is brilliant.
Yeah, bypassing the soil entirely makes total logical sense here. Because when an apple tree enters its reproductive stage and starts pushing out flowers, its root activity actually significantly decreases.
Right, all the energy is going upwards.
Exactly. Plus, if you apply vital nutrients like phosphorus directly to the soil, you risk having those minerals get locked up in complex soil chemistry.
Oh, for sure.
So they become totally unavailable to the roots. While highly mobile elements like nitrogen can just easily wash away in the spring rains.
Yeah, spraying the leaves delivers those crucial nutrients directly through the plant's surface stoma. And the timing of this application is just this incredible example of biomimicry.
Because of when the dandelions bloom.
Exactly. Dandelions naturally bloom slightly earlier in the spring than apple trees do.
Right.
So by fermenting the early dandelions, Kesser and Steen are literally capturing the chemical startup motor of the weed.
Oh, that's so cool.
And then they transfer those highly bioavailable flowering hormones directly to the apple tree at the exact moment the tree is trying to start its own blooming process.
But wait, applying a sticky fermented sugar syrup directly onto delicate emerging apple blossoms? That seems incredibly risky, doesn't it?
Sounds crazy, yeah.
Like if you're scaling up this KNF process, you would think coating delicate flowers in sugar would severely burn the plant tissue or just invite a massive pest infestation.
Well, you're right, and that risk dictates the absolute most critical rule of KNF foliar application, which is intense dilution.
Okay, so you don't just spray the syrup.
No, the pure syrup is never applied directly. Mr. Hendricks insists the FPJ must be heavily diluted with water at a ratio of 1 to 500 or even 1 to 1,000.
Wow, that is weak.
It is, but applying two separate, highly diluted treatments is vastly superior to a single concentrated dose.
Makes sense.
That 1 to 1,000 dilution completely prevents the osmotic burn on the delicate tissue. It ensures safe, gradual absorption through the leaves,
Right.
and it creates this subtle but constant environmental pressure that actually makes the leaf surface inhospitable to bad fungal spores.
Right, because they've essentially biohacked the apple tree to bloom early and aggressively with this energy shot. But forcing an explosive spring bloom leaves the tree super vulnerable, right?
It's extremely vulnerable.
Like those delicate new flowers become immediate targets for spring diseases. And our sources specifically highlight this really destructive fungus called Monilia.
Yeah, Manila is a nightmare.
So the black gold needs to be fortified. Kesser and Steen have to expand their brew into a comprehensive defense cocktail, starting with actual physical armor.
Yeah, and to build that armor, they incorporate this ancient plant called horsetail, or Eggerpadarock.
Agripedarock, yeah.
Horsetail is basically an evolutionary survivor. Its primary defense mechanism is hoarding massive amounts of silica.
Ah, silica.
Right. So when you ferment horsetail and include it in the foliar spray, the plant absorbs that silica and uses it to fortify the surface of its own cells.
So it essentially creates a microscopic, hardened suit of armor.
Exactly. It's like glass. When fungal spores like Monilia land on the leaf and try to send their fungal roots into the tissue, they hit this hardened glass-like cellular wall they just cannot penetrate.
Wow. The cocktail design is just incredibly sophisticated because they have the dandelion extract providing the reproductive energy, the horsetail creating silica armor, and then they add stinging nettles, right?
Stinging nettles.
Which act as this broad-spectrum botanical multivitamin, delivering high doses of nitrogen and iron.
It's amazing. And then to combat pathogens that might somehow slip past the armor, they incorporate natural antibiotics through another KNF preparation known as OHN.
Oriental herbal nutrients.
Right. And OHN is typically fermented from garlic or ginger, but the student's approach to the garlic is really strategic here.
Yeah, because instead of digging up the actual garlic bulb, which would, obviously destroy the crop, they harvest just the green garlic tops.
Which is so smart because the tops are rich in the exact same antifungal sulfur compounds as the bulb.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So they extract the sulfur through fermentation, and the garlic plant just simply regrows its shoots. It perfectly aligns with the KNF principle of continuous, non-destructive harvesting.
But even with energy, armor, and antibiotics, an exposed leaf surface is still, it's open real estate for pathogens.
Always.
So to truly dominate the microscopic environment, the cocktail introduces active biological infantry.
Yes, lactic acid bacteria, or L.
LAB. So KNF practitioners cultivate LAB anaerobically. They capture native microbes using just the cloudy water left over from washing rice, right?
Simple rice wash water.
And then they add milk to selectively feed and rapidly multiply the lactobacillus bacteria, and they finish it off with brown sugar for stability.
And applying LBAT to the apple tree creates this state of competitive exclusion.
Okay, competitive exclusion, meaning what exactly?
Well, when the foliar spray hits the leaves, these beneficial lactic acid bacteria physically occupy all the available surface area, and they rapidly consume any free carbohydrates.
Oh, I see. They outcompete the harmful fungal spores for space and food.
Exactly. The spores may land on the tree, but they literally starve before they can establish a colony.
That is wild. And then the final component they add to the sprayer is JLF, or JDOM liquid fertilizer.
Oh yeah, the smelly stuff.
Yeah, the sources describe this as a literally foul-smelling bucket of rainwater, seaweed, and discarded herbs that are just left to decompose anaerobically.
It is not pleasant.
No. But unlike an aerobic compost pile that relies on heat to break down matter, this liquid putrefaction breaks organic material down into an immediately bioavailable liquid form.
Right. And the inclusion of seaweed is the really critical factor here.
Because of the minerals.
Yeah, it introduces a broad spectrum of rare oceanic microminerals like iodine and specialized trace elements that terrestrial plants almost never encounter in standard agricultural soil.
Right. So the boys have basically engineered a highly sophisticated, fully organic super serum tailored specifically for the vulnerabilities of their apple trees.
Custom made.
And they utilize materials that conventional gardeners actively throw away into the yard waste bin, which kind of brings the entire process back to that K&F philosophy of zero waste.
Yeah, nothing gets wasted.
Because when Steen pulled those dandelions from Gunnar's lawn, he removed the entire plant, right?
Root and all.
Yeah. The yellow flowers drove the FPJ fermentation, but that leaves a massive pile of deep, stubborn tap roots.
And the roots are amazing. If the flower is the plant's engine for reproduction, the taproot is its survival bunker.
Oh, I like that.
The dandelion root is densely packed with complex sugars, specifically a carbohydrate compound called inulin. And the KNF utilization of this root starts at the absolute most basic step, which is just washing off the dirt.
Really? Just the wash water.
Yeah, the water used to scrub the roots is collected and it becomes this liquid gold root wash.
Wow.
This dark water is heavily saturated with tiny root particles, native soil bacteria, and dissolved inulin.
And in a no-dig garden system where preserving the existing soil structure is, like, paramount, this root wash functions as a biological signaling mechanism, right?
Exactly. So imagine you're transplanting a fragile new seedling into your garden. If you water it with that root wash, it delivers a concentrated dose of inulin right into the surrounding soil.
And that carbohydrate instantly signals the existing mycorrhizal fungi networks in the soil that a high-value food source has just arrived.
Exactly. The fungi immediately migrate toward the inulin, they encounter your new seedling, and they attach to its root system to form a symbiotic network.
That is so sneaky. You are chemically bribing the native soil biology to adopt and support your new transplant.
It's totally a bribe.
And then after the roots are washed, they can be preserved, right? Provided they are dried exclusively in the shade or a highly ventilated area.
Yes, shade is critical. Direct sunlight and UV rays will rapidly degrade and destroy the active biological compounds stored in the tissue.
Right, you don't want to cook them.
No. But once the roots are completely desiccated, they basically possess an indefinite shelf life.
Oh, wow.
You can pulverize them into a fine powder and apply it directly to planting holes as a slow-release soil improver.
So all that calcium, magnesium, and iron the dandelion spent its life hoarding down in the subsoil is transferred directly to the root zone of your cultivated vegetables.
Exactly. And furthermore, the root contains potent bitter substances.
Oh, the bitters, yeah.
Yeah, in both natural medicine and organic agriculture, these bitters are really recognized for strengthening the general immune response of plants. It helps them endure severe environmental stress, like prolonged drought or excessive rainfall.
It's like the dandelion acts as its own self-contained agricultural supply store. I mean, it's like the buffalo of the plant world. Absolutely every part of it is utilized, right down to the bathwater used to clean the roots.
That's a really good analogy, yeah.
Because even beyond the fertilizer applications, our sources point out the fresh leaves serve as highly nutrient-dense feed for livestock like rabbits. And the young leaves are harvested for human salads because they have this intense concentration of vitamins A and C.
Yep, they are super healthy.
There's even a practical application for the white sap found inside the stem.
Oh yeah, the sap.
If you are foraging and you accidentally brush against stinging nettles, applying the dandelion sap to the affected skin acts as a natural, mild analgesic. I mean, the remedy literally grows adjacent to the hazard.
It's amazing. It demands a fundamental shift in how we perceive a landscape, really.
Yeah.
Instead of viewing an ecosystem as this binary battleground of, desirable crops on one side and invasive weeds on the other, KNF treats the environment as an interconnected laboratory.
Every plant, regardless of its reputation, holds a specific chemical utility just waiting to be unlocked.
Exactly.
I mean, we followed Kesser and Steen today as they looked at a lawn full of pesky dandelions, and they saw chemical potential.
They really did.
They harvested early morning flowers to preserve surface microbes, utilized the osmotic pressure of brown sugar to extract vital growth hormones without using heat, and they brewed a potent enzyme-rich FPJ.
Yep.
They bypassed soil lockup by precision spraying the diluted serum directly onto apple blossoms, timing the application to transfer the dandelion's explosive spring energy right to the tree.
And they armored the tree with silica from horsetail, outcompeted fungi with lactic acid bacteria, and used the leftover taproots to signal mycorrhizal networks in their soil.
They completely transformed a Sunday chore into a masterclass in localized biology.
By analyzing the specific attributes of local weeds, they engineered a customized, highly effective agricultural input without purchasing a single synthetic chemical.
It just changes how you view a weed
It
entirely.
really does.
And it leaves a lingering, somewhat provocative question based on the sources we read today. Because we have just examined the sheer volume of energy, vitamins, hormones, and minerals that dandelions accumulate.
Right. It's a massive amount of power.
And we saw how Kesser and Steen rigorously fermented all that power to create a restorative super fertilizer strictly for their apple trees. But the texts also note that historically, dandelion roots were roasted as a coffee substitute, and the leaves were prized for their intense vitamin profiles.
Yeah, humans used to eat them all the time.
Exactly. So if we put this much scientific effort and precise chemistry into extracting a weed's energy for agriculture, what immense untapped potential might these deeply rooted, resilient plants hold for human nutrition and medicine?
Oh, wow.
I mean, we may be ignoring an entire pharmacy of highly evolved, nutrient-dense foods in our own backyards simply because a modern lawn care company convinced us to label them as weeds.
That's a really wild thought to leave on.
Right. Well, thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We will catch you next time.